Good afternoon. As I said before, welcome to today's webinar entitled Embracing Remote Paperless Bidding in 2021. My name is Nick Gillum, and I'll serve as your moderator during this session. We will review frequently asked questions on how remote paperless bidding has benefited our user base, followed by a brief demo of the Bid Express service. Before we get started, we need to address some housekeeping items. Throughout today's webinar, we will be muted, so don't worry if your dog is barking in the background, have a blender running, can't get Zoom to work like me just now, alarm going off, or just streaming Netflix. It's important to note there is a Q&A on the bottom of your screen that we will be monitoring the rest of the session, so please use this to ask any questions you have throughout the rest of the webinar. Finally, as I just stated, please understand we're all using Zoom with different internet connections, which may bring challenges. So I'm sure you've all been there at some point. So you may experience those issues, and a recording of this webinar will be available next week. First off, we'd like to start with introductions. Myself, as your host, I am Nick Gillum. Been working for Infotech for about 5 years now in the sales and marketing department. Been very grateful to now be a senior account manager when not playing golf, as you can see in my background. Love working here in the culture of our wonderful family. I'll now give time to Michael to introduce himself.
Thanks, Nick. Hey everyone, Michael here. I've been with Infotech for almost 4 years now, and I help public agencies and their consultant firms overcome everyday challenges through some of Infotech's e-construction tools. And I'm excited to use that experience to talk with you all today about how an electronic bidding system can address some of the biggest issues with the traditional paper bidding process.
Great, thank you, Michael. So today, from the agenda standpoint that we have here, we'll cover a high-level summary of what we're seeing in our industry and how the Bid Express service is utilized to implement remote paperless bidding. We'll cover each of the following topics as you see here. The general will basically cover high-level details and benefits of electronic bidding. And we'll discuss the three phases we've broken out as advertising or releasing these solicitations, the bidder answering and responding to the solicitations, and then of course an agency accepting and opening solicitations. Within each area, we'll find a way to address specific benefits that the user community has experienced with paperless remote bidding. As I said before, we'll try to get to everyone's questions at the end, but please remember to use the Q&A at the bottom. And if there is some form of, I would call it compliment or a joke within the question, you get high priority. So please do so. Okay, let's jump right in. So we'd be remiss without bringing up the general overview before talking about COVID. It goes without saying, COVID has created a large impact with many organizations, our organization, and within our industry and others. Michael, how has COVID affected paperless bidding, in your opinion?
Well, for our current user community that had already adopted electronic bidding prior to the pandemic, 2020 was mostly business as usual. And some of the changes that they have made since COVID include things like mandating that all submissions be electronic as opposed to providing the option to submit on paper, mandating that electronic download of plan sets and specifications instead of physically dropping into the office to get a physical copy, and then adopting video conferencing tools to display the live opening like Zoom that we're using now, WebEx, YouTube Live, Facebook Live. But interestingly enough, when the pandemic began and social distancing guidelines were put into place across the country, Infotech saw an increase of about 1,000% in inquiries for electronic bidding. And we ended up providing more demonstrations in the months following the lockdown than in all of 2019. And we've also seen around 25 new agencies and their consultants adopt electronic bidding in 2020 alone. So it seems like agencies who already are doing electronic bidding have taken COVID as an opportunity to fully invest in all electronic processes. And then for agencies who haven't adopted, who haven't hopped on the e-bidding train yet, they're actively considering it and exploring this technology for their needs.
Great, thank you, Michael. So moving on to our general overview, as we addressed earlier, many asked the question you see here. So tell us, Michael, what is your online bidding experience, and what is online bidding itself? Why are agencies and bidders increasingly adopting this platform?
So this topic of cloud-based solicitation management refers to public agencies or their firms and the bidder community completing normal everyday tasks like drafting, advertising, release of addenda, question and answer, submitting and opening responses all in a standard web browser, as opposed to traditional method of bidders printing out physical copies and then filling those forms in wet ink and then shipping those bids through snail mail or having an employee hand deliver their response. But what we've heard from our clients is that they were seeking an electronic bidding system to address issues or inefficiencies with their paper bidding process, like receiving bids and proposals with errors or omissions that they have to disqualify, manually reporting the results and tabulations once they've opened those responses, dealing with late bids and having to reject those submissions, and then in terms of COVID, having to enable that remote bidding option so that they can safely submit a bid. And today we'll present plenty of real life stories from agencies that face these same challenges and were able to overcome them by managing their solicitations in the cloud.
Great. Thank you, Michael. We will address many key benefits of remote paperless bidding, as you said, during the session, but let's start with late bids. Certainly, we have many customer stories, but we have one up, as we all can see here on the slide, that certainly I'll let Michael address and describe later. But first, Michael, with many scrambling to find a remote solution, have you seen a reason agencies have been using this platform outside of the current pandemic?
Well, I think that the 200 plus public agencies that we work with will tell you absolutely yes, there is a reason. And that electronic bidding just happened to already solve the issue of remote submission that COVID brought to the table. And before all this started, we had seen countless cases where agencies were trying to address those challenges that we just mentioned a few moments ago. Just to share a few examples on the topic of late bids, Put-in-Bay Township Port Authority out of Ohio. It's a bit of an extreme example, but still a great testament to late bids due to mail delays. They stated that because we're on an island, most of the contractors send their bids via FedEx, and those have to be into us by 4 p.m. Well, FedEx doesn't drive onto the ferry and onto the island. They unload their packages in a little trailer, which is then brought over and unloaded by the ferry company. That arrives in the afternoon, so I was always frantic that I was going to miss someone's package by the deadline. Another sort of extreme situation, but still an example that it does happen. In Oklahoma, there was a bidder that had their packet delivered, and the truck carrying their bid ended up crashing due to ice on the roads. So their bid was never received. And then finally, we had a county out in California come to us for help because they had a large project bid due at 1:30 p.m. The low bidder hit some traffic on the way to deliver their bid and ended up submitting at 1:29 p.m. with just a minute left. After the opening, it was revealed that the difference between the low bidder and the next highest was about $1 million. So had that low bidder missed a single green light or encountered another minute of traffic, it would have cost the agency $1 million in a single minute. So for those agencies and many others, risking that amount of loss just wasn't worth it going forward. So they decided to look into instant bid submissions online.
Very cool. Just hearing all those stories, the one thing that comes to mind, I doubt there was enough Pepto-Bismol in Put-in-Bay offices on bid deadline day. I mean, it's amazing to think about how you'd have to stress through a situation like that. So great case studies, great user stories. Moving on then to another situation that we deal with often, which is a key issue of paper-based bidding: bid omissions, errors, mistakes, another frustration commonly heard throughout the industry. First, can you describe the graphic we're looking at here, and then provide some examples of how you've experienced this with users and how this ROI would make sense?
Sure. So this was a study conducted by FHWA that basically looks at the return on investment of various e-construction tools. And right at the top of that list is electronic bidding. Their study found that agencies that adopt this technology for their bidding processes break even on their investment after about 3 years. And then that after 7 years, the average ROI was 700%. That is a huge return. Imagine if you could, invest in a stock and earn back 700% in just 7 years. That'd be like going back in time and investing in Netflix or cryptocurrency. And that ROI is mainly in the form of eliminating costly disqualifications of low bidders due to non-responsive bids. And we have real life examples of this. A county out in Minnesota had a situation where they lost $100,000 in one bid because the low bidder omitted a required form. So they had to move on to the next lowest bidder. And that was actually the critical event that pushed them to seek out electronic bidding for their processes. Another example is Caltrans, California State DOT. They have an estimated annual construction program of about 11 billion, and they found out that non-responsive bids due to clerical and math errors from their bidders cost them about $12 million in a single year. So those low bidder disqualifications certainly add up to a pretty penny over time. And the best way to avoid those is by adopting an electronic system that, one, does the bid price math for your bidders, and then two, checks their response for any sort of omissions before they submit. And later on in today's demonstration, we'll see exactly how that would work.
Great. Yeah, there's no doubt 700% ROI seems timely, given our Reddit, Robinhood, GameStop, AMC, cryptocurrency situation. I'd rather have invested in Apple about, I don't know, 25 years ago too, but that's a situation we'll address maybe in a different webinar. And no, I will not be answering any questions that come along in the Q&A on that. Another great case study we see here, basically with the city of Milwaukee about increased competition. And that's another one of the cases that certainly we can make for paperless remote bidding, that it helps enable remote productivity and also increase competitive bidding within the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is kind of, for me, just a quick plug for the Packers, since I'm a huge Packer fan. That's just me being personal here. But at the same time, Milwaukee found a way to reach bidders using Bid Express. And Michael, what have you seen, and can you tell us more about the benefit that you've seen with the agencies?
Sure. So the city of Milwaukee is a great success story for agencies that go all in with online solicitation management, from electronic submission to instant bid tabulations, and then even verifying bid bonds online. They really just dove in headfirst and took on as much of this technology as they could. And while they were thrilled to address their primary challenge, which was non-responsive bids, they also were surprised to see an improvement in the number of bidders that they were reaching with their solicitations. And they're not alone. Here's a great testimonial from Clinton County, Ohio on increased competition. They said, we're seeing a 40 to 70% increase in the number of bidders depending on the scope of the project, which is an incredible improvement. I mean, we believe that every agency should have that level of competition on their projects. And then in terms of maintaining productivity in a remote setting, Clinton County also said, when COVID hit, they sent us all home. I just kept cranking out projects. We bid projects where I'm sitting at home, the commissioner's at the office, my boss is at his office, and we're doing Zoom calls where I share my screen and we open bids. We never missed a day from COVID. And I'm glad that we got Bid Express when we did. So even though COVID had such a huge impact on productivity nationwide, these agencies never even flinched, and they continued to receive those high quality competitive bids.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Moving on then to the advertisement phase. With remote paperless bidding with Bid Express, you see here some screenshots that Michael will show you a little bit more in the live demo itself, when it comes to what each agency needs to see, when it comes to unique requirements that come from each agency, each bid packet or package, each response. We get it. Luckily, we work with so many agencies. We're all snowflakes. Everyone needs to find something different within their agency. And Michael, I know you've been doing this for quite some time. You've had plenty of experience with this. How do we help agencies bring their specific needs to us to then advertise to their bidder community?
So we recognize that each type of bidder proposal package has its own format and required forms that have to be filled out by the bidders every time. And our goal is to recreate those required forms in an electronic template so that every time a bid or RFP needs to be advertised, you can just pull that template you've already created that has all of those relevant forms and requirements. And then from there, you would just add your project specific details like project documents and bid items and then advertise. And these templates can actually be designed to look exactly like your paper forms, so your bidders will be familiar with the online versions as they fill them out. We really try to make it as quick and easy as possible for all agencies, no matter what their processes or requirements are.
Excellent, thank you. Continuing on with the advertising process, another case study we've developed with the city of Huntington, West Virginia, shows the efficacy of Bid Express as it relates to bid packet preparation and overall advertisement time itself. The time savings are significant versus the paper process. There's no doubt we can see that from the percentages here. And we hear that from our agencies and certainly bidders frequently. Michael, what are your thoughts on Huntington and how do we make this time savings happen?
Yeah, so we've seen agencies like the city of Huntington save hours per project when drafting and advertising. And in their case, they specifically went from 4 hours per advertisement on paper to only 15 minutes electronically. And the way that they accomplished this was using that simple advertisement process that we just discussed. And it's made up of four main steps. First step is choose the template you want to start from based on the type of solicitation you're advertising. Second step is to provide your summary information, like your project number, deadline, any description, details. The third step is upload your project documents, like a PDF bid package, plans, specifications, any documentation your bidders would need to see. And then the fourth and final step is to import your unique list of project items for that project. And then from there, you just click advertise and it's publicly available for your bidders to start responding to.
That's a great segue to answering then, the next step in our phase. And no doubt the advertising component is quite simple, but it's essential to the entire process. Businesses responding or answering to a bid. I mean, how do bidders submit the remote paperless bids? I know working on the support side, you have a great experience here. Can you explain to people listening out there how that works?
Sure. So new bidders, even if they're not registered for Bid Express, can go from zero to bidding in a matter of minutes. All that they have to do is set up a free account, which just entails going to bidexpress.com, clicking register, filling out their bidder information, and then verifying their email address. Once they've done that, all they have to do is locate the bid, which there are three ways that they can do that. They can either search directly through Bid Express, they can sign up for email notifications from subscribing to agencies, or they can click a link on the agency's home webpage that brings them over to Bid Express. Regardless, however they find that bid, once they've found it, they can start drafting a response. And then after they've filled out that full form, they can then check their bid for any omitted requirements and then click to submit instantly. And when I say that they can get ready to bid in minutes, I'm speaking from personal experience. As you mentioned, I started at Infotech on the Bid Express customer support team. And I had countless situations where bidders would call in and say that they have 30 minutes to submit a bid and they hadn't even registered yet. But we were able to get them successfully online and submit a bid in time since it was instant and everything was online and electronic.
So what you're saying, there is no Pepto-Bismol necessary in the support area, which is fantastic. That's
Correct.
wonderful to hear. Thank you, Michael. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Geez, this is kind of turning into a Pepto-Bismol promotion. Moving on to the next topic, accepting the bids themselves. Agency users, as you can see on the screen, you'll have real-time access post bids deadline to see submitted bids, open them or not open them, post them or not. And you'll also be able to see item pricing and also whether or not they're submitted electronically or if you have paper bids that you have to submit as well. Michael, tell us how agencies you've dealt with generally handle their bid openings given the circumstances now.
Well, many agencies still have that requirement to hold a public bid opening to keep the process transparent. And to do that, they usually employ a live broadcasting tool like Zoom that any of the other bidders can log into and watch. And basically what they do is they then click to open any electronic bids they've received through their system and then break the seal on any of the paper bids and read all of the results aloud, just like they would in an in-person opening. From there, they would then post the results online with automatic notifications to the contractors so that they can come and view those as soon as they're posted. It's a very transparent process, even though it's remote and the bidders aren't there in person.
Great. All right, Michael, I'm handing over control to you now. You can take the wheel for a brief demo of the Bid Express service.
All right.
You are old enough to drive, right?
Yes. How's that look now?
Just making sure. Looks like I see your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are currently viewing the site from a bidder's perspective as if we've already found a project that we want to bid on and we've begun drafting a response. Now, thanks to BidExpress's electronic form templates, all bidders' responses are standardized, their bid totals are calculated for them, and any requirements that they've omitted are flagged for them before they submit. And we'll see how each of those features works as we fill out this bid response together. But as a bidder, I can review all the general information, download any project documentation from the attachments list, like specifications or plans. And then in the required document list, I have some required forms that I have to upload to submit. So let's upload an example of a bid bond. Moving on to the item list. As a bidder, I'm able to fill in my unit prices, and notice that as I fill in these prices, it's being multiplied by the quantity automatically to get me my item extension. And then my overall bid total is also being calculated for me. So neither the bidder nor the agency has to worry about any sort of math errors when they are submitting bids. Moving on to the electronic bid forms. So this was a bid form that was originally on paper, and we were able to recreate it to look exactly like it did on paper, but in your web browser. So as a bidder, I'm going to be using my mouse and keyboard to fill out all of the fields that I would normally fill out in wet ink. And you'll notice that some of these fields are already filled in for me, like my bidder name, my business address, phone number, things like that. And that was done because the agency enabled an autocomplete feature that will fill in the bidder's information based off their profile. So that'll save me quite a bit of time when I'm filling out all of these forms. But I can type into fields to satisfy them. I can choose from a list of options. And now let's say that as a bidder, we've gone through this entire bid and we think we're done and we want to check it for any errors. So if we scroll back to the top, I have a button here that says check bid. And clicking this, BidExpress tells me my bid is incomplete. And then when I click OK, it highlights everything that I missed that was required in red. So I know exactly what I need to fill out to be considered responsive. And as I enter that information, those red fields are cleared out for me. Now let's say that I've gone through and I've filled in every single red field that I can find, and I think that I'm ready to submit. When I scroll to the top and click submit, BidExpress lets me know again that this bid is incomplete. So your bidders are getting multiple notifications if their bids if their bids include any sort of errors or omissions that would deem them non-responsive. And the reason that we let them submit anyway is because we want to give the agency the power to determine what is considered responsive versus non-responsive. So once they submit, they're asked to supply their electronic signature. And now that bid has been sent to the virtual lockbox for this project, and no one can view that bid data until the deadline is passed and the agency has opened their bid. Now I'm also given a timestamp at the top of when it was last submitted, the status of my bid, and who signed it. And then I also have a deadline timer. Now this timer will get more and more accurate as time passes, all the way down to seconds. So as a bidder, I can sit in the comfort of my office, not having to physically deliver a bid, watch that timer tick down, and even resubmit all the way up until that deadline. So if I get new prices for my subcontractor and want to update my bid, I can just resubmit. And now this new submission will overwrite any previous submissions that I would have sent to the agency. So you can ensure that the agency only receives your most recent up-to-date bid information. So now that we've walked through an example of submitting a response through BidExpress, let's log into the agency side of the system and go through an example of a public opening. Now, once that project deadline has passed, you can actually go into the project and fetch the responses from the virtual lockbox. And doing that will bring me to a new page where I have all my plan holders listed and my submitted bids. And so this is the point at which the agencies would typically start broadcasting, show all the submitted bids. There's a button to open each one individually if for some reason you need to pre-qualify those responses first. I can open them one by one, or I can open them all at once and view those results. And now that they're open, I'm able to jump into each individual submission and view the full details as it would have looked to the bidders on their end. So now that I've opened my electronic bids, I would then break the seal on any paper bids I may have received from my bidders. And those can be entered in the manual bids section. So this enables you to include all of your paper bid data in any of the reports, any of the publications that you push to your bidders, so that they have a full picture of all of the responses. Now, once I've entered all that information, I can then scroll to the top and post the apparent results. Choose whether I want to include any non-responsive bids, excuse me. And then once I click Post Apparent, I now have the apparent bid section. And this is what my bidders will see publicly on BidExpress. Anyone on the plan holders list or anyone that submitted to this project will get an email notification that those results have been posted. And I can even include comments next to each submission. So if I want to say Evans Excavator is the apparent low, now all my bidders will see that comment. So that sort of ends the public opening process where you read the apparent results. At this point, I'm ready to start digging deeper into these responses and make sure I have a full understanding of what each bidder is offering. So as soon as I broke the seal on those electronic bids, my actions dropdown gives me a few different versions of a tabulation and other exports that I can pull out of the system that include all of my bid data. So starting with the tabulation, BidExpress will display all of your bidders' line item prices side by side for easy comparison. And I can even export this data in form of an Excel file if I need to do additional analyses, plug in my own formulas, things like that. Or I can post these tabulations publicly for the bidders online. So the purpose of all these reports and exports is to quickly present you with all of the bid data in an easy to analyze format so that you can quickly come to an informed decision on who should be awarded the project. So with all these tools at the fingertips of both the agency and the bidders, agencies can ensure that they receive competitive, responsive bids while saving time and automating much of the solicitation management process, both before and after bidding. And that's pretty much all I had to show today, Nick.
How's my video looking?
Looks great.
Well, at least I got that transition right this time. Nice job, Michael. Thank you very much for the overview. There's no doubt seeing the system in person and also just watching what you do as you walk through there is certainly important for everyone to get a great reminder of what the BidExpress service can do. So as an overall reminder too, from our slides in the demo itself, there are 4 key points that we're looking at here on the recap slide here. Nobody likes to read PowerPoint bullets, but I'm going to do it as a point of emphasis to ensure our marketing team will give me some feedback tomorrow. As you see, there are 4 main points that we certainly want to address today. Bid errors and omissions are no longer a concern with remote paperless bidding. Reporting and bid tab analysis are immediately available when it comes to providing a paperless remote solution. Late bids are eliminated. Bidders and the agency themselves will be happier because they have a product like this and a solution and a platform that they can actually ensure that they don't have any issues. And lastly, the larger competitive pool viewing and submitting bids is, I think, paramount to many other things too. We've seen more and more agencies that are happy with competitive bids coming in and also just knowing that they're available to most of their user group, their people that are looking for the bids themselves. So if you're interested and are concerned about any of these areas or some that maybe you've thought of while we've been showing you this session that we didn't address, we would love to offer you a personalized viewpoint of what your agency is dealing with or we have issues with. So we'd love to present that to you. We do that often. And however we can help you moving forward with paperless bidding would be our pleasure. Moving on to the next slide, we are going to the Q&A component. Now, we do have a few questions in. You do have some time to send some more as we go through them. The first one that has come in, actually, Michael, might come towards your end. As I scroll through here, it looks like, what does the onboarding process look like for BidExpress? And so in your experience, what is the overall picture of that process, Michael?
Well, in my time working with our implementation team, I've seen total active training time for BidExpress adding up to about 6 to 8 hours. And this is possible due to BidExpress being a web-based system. It's designed to be out of the box ready for new agencies without any sort of heavy lift from their IT teams. And onboarding mainly consists of overall system training, reviewing templates for correctness, mock bid advertisement and opening, and then we even offer to be on standby should you need any help with your first live bid opening. We actually do pretty much all of the heavy lifting in the form of setting up your solicitation templates and getting your account set up properly for your needs.
Very good. Thank you. The next one we have here, kind of trying to take a look at Q&A as we keep going too, because a couple are popping up. Actually, 1, 2, all right. Sorry for everybody if I'm trying to do both at once. I will say the next one that we have 2 of is what is the cost of the service to the agency and the contractor, which I think can be answered with the same question. And I'll take that one, Michael. What is the cost of the service? We have 2 models here. The most chosen is vendor pay, where the bidder or vendor would have 2 payment options through our service. Majority of the users will subscribe to an unlimited monthly submission perspective. They get any of our 200 plus agencies using the service for $50 per month to continue to submit as many solicitations or bids to solicitations. And then you also have the option for, as a bidder, to do a one-time $35 fee for a single bid at any given time. Bidding community we work with has basically used that as a much lower cost of a courier service and putting together a paper bid and just dealing with that alone. So that's why that price has been set where it is. We do also have an agency pay model as well, where if you do want to sponsor your agency community or your bidder community, excuse me, to ensure that you have them not telling you that they don't want to pay for the bidding solution itself, you can actually pay for that for them, and it's based upon solicitation level on an annual basis. So hopefully that answers the question appropriately. There is no doubt that we try to ensure that we keep it as appropriate for your agency as we move on an annual basis as well when it comes to the agency pay standpoint as well. The next one we have here too, Michael, is about, we have one about new agency. So when a new agency were to onboard, Michael, how do we transition our bidders towards that actual platform, the BidExpress service?
Well, first, what we've seen agencies do is post a blurb on their existing bidding webpage indicating that transition, and then maybe providing a link over to BidExpress landing page for their agency so that bidders can quickly find the agency solicitations. And then during the onboarding phase, we actually provide the agency with some sample vendor communication language that they can include in their bid packets, send out in an email announcement, or post on their website. So that's just a few ways that we ensure that your bidding community gets the memo and that they find the right place on BidExpress.
Right, very good. We have a couple others too. We have one coming up about whether or not the bid tab can be customized. And I know we can speak to that somewhat when it comes to how we can actually export the data to Excel. That would be the best way for us to address that. Wouldn't you say, Michael?
Sure, yeah. So all of the Excel exports that come out of BidExpress are fully editable. So if you need to reformat the way that data shows up in the tabulation, you can do that after exporting. Also, if you already have a template bid tab analysis, excuse me, Excel file that you use regularly, you could just copy and paste the results from the BidExpress export over into your own formatted Excel file.
Great, good answer. And no doubt that's true. The last one we do have up here that I think would be fun to address is, has BidExpress ever lost a bid? Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael?
Sure, that's a great question, and no. So Infotech has been doing electronic bidding since 1997 with over 150 owner agencies and consultant firms, including 44 of the state DOTs. We processed over $1.5 trillion worth of bids in the years. And in that time, we've never lost a bid. We've never had any bids intercepted or tampered with. It's a very secure system.
Great. Okay. It looks like we don't have any more time for questions at this point, so I'm going to move on to the next, unless someone wants to throw one in there about Michael or I, or what the Packers' chances are for next year. We're going to move on to the next slide. I'll be watching the Q&A too as we keep going. So the next slide does show an upcoming webinar for Infotech and our ongoing series with our webinar series. And next up will be the construction project setup best practices. It's tentatively scheduled right now for late March, so please be on the lookout for that invite to attend. And on top of that, we just want to thank everyone again for joining us today. And we hope our session was educational and provided more insight on how moving to remote paperless bidding in 2021 makes sense for you. You'll be getting an email with survey that will help us improve webinars going forward. So we really do rely on that information. Please do give us your feedback. And lastly, you'll see Michael and I have our information up on the screen. So if you have anything that needs to be personalized on your end as far as your agency, we'd love to provide that to you. So please reach out to us and let us know what you're looking for as far as personalized webinar or any additional questions you may have. So please reach out to us, and thank you for every second you've given us today, and hopefully you have a great day.